Welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I'll be covering every studio song the band has recorded and every bonus track that I can find. Each week we'll go over a new song from the beginning to where they are currently, and as they keep adding albums, I'll keep adding shows. Let the deep dive party begin.
In the magic garden, some were singing, some were dancing.
Hello and welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast, and also welcome to Monday. Happy New Week, you guys. I've got a song today that probably is the most important, or maybe the song that I feel the strongest about with the band, because this song was my introduction to Uriah Heep when I saw the video on MTV back in the early 80s. And I can't say I had never heard the band before. I can't say that because I don't know. It's very possible that at some point I heard The Wizard or Easy Livin' or Lady in Black or one of those, more well-known songs at some point on the radio, on, maybe if there was a reference to it on a television show or something. I don't know. It is very possible. But the first song I was actually able to identify as this is who Uriah Heep is this song called That's the Way That It Is. Now, I'll tell you a funny story, and this is going to make me look bad, but if you can't laugh at yourself once in a while, then you're get off the planet. So when I first heard this song, I was really excited by a couple of things. One, I thought that Peter Goalby looked like Parker Stevenson, who was on The Hardy Boys, which was a show I really liked. So there was kind of a familiarity right there that made no sense to probably anyone on earth but me. And then when I heard the song or was listening to the song, there's a word that was used that I got really excited about because I thought, I'm probably the only one in my age group that knows what this word means. And when I go back to school, after the summer's over, because I'm pretty sure it was in the summer that I first heard the song, after I go back to school, I'll be like, I know a word that you guys don't. And I was all proud. Well, it turns out the word isn't even in the song. I had the lyrics wrong. So, that's how it goes. But I'll tell you what the line I thought was, you can scream at me, throw your bowers at me, won't ever hear your voice. Now, that really doesn't make any sense, does it? The actual line is, you can scream at me, but the powers that be won't ever hear your voice. That makes far more sense. Now, granted, I was pretty young. I wasn't really a lyricist. I wasn't a poet, nothing like that. I wrote stories, but I wasn't, a lyricist. So, looking back, it's kind of funny to actually find out that I've had the words wrong all these years. But it's a great song. And by the way, the reason I knew the word Bowers was because my family loved to play the card game euchre. And I don't know anyone that I went to school with, at least that admitted it, that would play the game euchre, but my family loved it. I loved the game. And it's a very simple game, really a card game, but the Bowers are the power cards. So anyway, so that's how I knew the word and thought I'd be all proud. And then for years was completely wrong. I can now laugh at myself. So it is Monday. And before we get into our Monday gratitude, I'll just let you know, now this is a cover song, actually. This was originally written by Paul Bliss. And it was a cover version originally recorded by the Bliss Band and released on their album Neon Smiles in 1979. So really just about 3 years before Uriah Heep would release it. And, it's a great song. I don't know the Paul Bliss version. I've never heard it. I didn't even know it was a cover until I started researching this episode, really, to be honest. I just always assumed that they wrote it. And there's nothing wrong with that. Whatever it was that I heard in this song that made me love it is what made me love it. And it was their performance of it. It's one of those things that I'll be curious when I have the time to go back and listen to the original version and see what the original idea was, what Heep did to change it and kind of make it their own. But it's a great song. It's got a lot of good stuff in it. I don't really remember much about the video. I just remember that there was a video. I haven't tried to find it on YouTube yet. I'm sure it's on there somewhere, but I've tried to just recall it in my mind. And to be honest, I don't have a damn clue what was going on because I just don't remember. I just remember that whenever they would announce, like MTV would do at the beginning of the hour, they would have the rocket ship take off and they would talk about 3 songs that they were going to play during that hour. And whenever they announced that Uriah Heep was going to be on, I just got all excited. And it wasn't for probably a couple years yet, I don't think, maybe not, that I probably through my brother, I would imagine. I don't know if we had an 8-track tape or what it was that we found. Maybe we found something by them at the Salvation Army and we're like, oh, for a quarter, we can find out more about this band we know this other song from. But whatever the case was, that's when I went back and started learning all the back catalog, Salisbury and Demons and Wizards and Look at Yourself and all those other great albums. So this song is really important to me because it was my gateway into the band. And while there's plenty of other songs that are very important to me as a musician, Salisbury being one of them, a huge one of them, this song, it just kind of stands out on its own for me because it was my introduction into the band. So that being said, I'm really happy to bring you this episode. This was one of the episodes when I first thought about doing the show that I was most excited to do because I've never really sat and analyzed the song before. I've just enjoyed it as is. So I'm going to be curious to see what I find as I, pay some real close attention to what's happening. So being that it's Monday, though, I want to talk to the people that I want to thank for all the cool things that they do or have done for the show. First of all, BMG, new box set coming out here real soon, end of September. And it's going to be here before you know it, guys. The year is just flying by. Despite all the insanity, time just seems to be moving very, very quickly. But the new box set is coming out, 7 picture discs, 7 t-shirts, a wall calendar, phrases. It's going to be awesome. And I'm really looking forward to getting a copy of that myself. It will be a good time. So September 24th, I believe, is the day that that's coming out. So you can go to the link in the show notes and pre-order it now to make sure that you get your copy. I don't know how many they're making, and I imagine they're going to go fairly quickly. So if you're interested in one, go get yours reserved ASAP. I also want to let our winner be announced here for this month's, for August contest of the album that I give away every month. This is Vernon. Vernon, if I have not reached out to you yet, or if you have not responded to me, please let me know what album you want, and we'll work out all the details from there. And you can reach me, of course, through the Uriah Heep podcast page on my website, scotthaskin.com. Go down to the bottom, or you can just write the email address that you subscribe to. Either way, you might have forgotten it because I never send out any newsletters. That's very possible. But there are some other people, too, that really do a lot just out of their personal lives to help the show, and that would be my patrons. And at the $5 Easy Living tier, we have Kenny Wymore and Brad D. At the $3 The Wizard tier, we've got Peter Voss, Goran Eriksson, Frank Thielgaard Mortensen, and William Rose. And at the $1 tier, which is named Traveler in Time, we have the Better Than Saran Wrap Airtight Gravesite. Thank you all very much for your kind donations. It's very thoughtful of you, and it means a ton to me. And also, we have some other people, all the people that share the episodes when I post them, all the people that share the podcast links, letting other people know that the show exists. That really means a lot to me. With all the people that love Uriah Heep, I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there that don't yet know about the podcast. And for those of you that share it and help people find out about it so that they can hear the reviews, hear the thoughts on some of their favorite songs, that is just awesome. That's deeply, deeply appreciated. Thank you very much. Also to my graphic artist, Scott Lazinski, who did the amazing logo for the show, my friends at Audionamics and their product IDC, or Instant Dialogue Cleaner, that helps make this show sound amazingly clean, considering that I live next to a very loud international airport. My buddy Dave White, who is the Uriah Heep's director of social media and shares all the episodes on the Uriah Heep pages. And of course, all of you that listen and take the time to sit with me and hear what I have to say about these songs. If there was no one listening, there wouldn't be a podcast to do. And last but not least, I want to thank a few other people. Ace, who is Uriah Heep's manager and has his own show, Ace on Music, on Stitcher and YouTube. You can also go to his Patreon and get some after show content. And of course, we have Allegra at Gotta Hear 'Em All, where she digs into the lives of Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Deep Purple, and all kinds of other fun little tidbits. She does a great job on that site. My buddy Brandon at Metallicast, my favorite Metallicast, or my favorite Metallicast podcast is the one Brandon does. My favorite Metallica podcast is the one that Brandon does. I actually have listened to a couple of other ones, and I really prefer his show, to be quite honest. And of course, to all of you guys who have left ratings and reviews, and that also helps get the show noticed. So it's very much appreciated, especially if you've done it on either Podbean or Apple Music / iTunes, because those are the ones that I am most likely to see. If you've left it on some of the other players, I may not see them. So feel free to reach out to me and let me know if you've left feedback in any of those places, what episodes, etc. And of course, before we get into the song, it is so important to me to thank my brothers at the Deep Dive Podcast Network. We have Nate and John at the Deep Purple Podcast. We have the Simple Man at Skinnerd Reconsidered. We have Terry T-Bone Mathley at T-Bone's Prime Cuts on the other side. We have Rye at Sabbath Bloody Podcast. Paul, Joe, and David at the In the Lap of the Pods Podcast. Andy and Matt at the Hawk Binge Podcast. And Eric and Jonathan at Maiden A to Z. Thank you guys for bringing the great shows that you do. I hope that you guys in the audience are checking out these shows because they're really, really well done, every one of them. They all have a different flavor, a different way of doing things, which is what keeps it interesting, because if we all had the same damn format, it would just get pretty boring. So I love that. There are some similarities between the shows. I've ripped off a lot from Nate on the Deep Purple podcast in my formatting, and John, of course, because I really liked the way that they did it, and it just kind of happened accidentally that I ripped them off and didn't realize it. So thanks, guys, for helping make my show better because of your show. Anyway, let's get into the song, That's the Way That It Is. Why? Because that's the way that it is. I was just about to say, I love how good they've gotten at misdirection at the beginning of a song, but then I realized, you know what, this is a cover song. So the challenge for me is that I really don't know what to credit the band with versus what the original idea was that they kept or what they modified to make it more Uriah Heep-like. Since I've never heard the original, I can't really say what is proper to give credit for and not give credit for. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tell you what I like and what I don't like, if there's anything I don't like. Because I know there's things I like, the whole song. But what I've noticed first off is that the band in general on this album has really gotten good at misdirection at the very beginning of a song. You think it's going to be a certain thing, and then they immediately change it and go in a different direction. I love when the whole band kicks in off of that really lovely intro. Love Mick's guitar sound on this. The drums are coming through, which is nice. And you've got a really nice low end bass in there. It's got a really good blend to it. And now we're just doing simple quarter notes, just setting that pulse as we move into the vocals.
I've been thinking about what you said last night, and for all your fine words, you still don't have it right.
So we got some cool stuff going on. Obviously, very strong vocal from Peter Goalby. No surprise there. But we've got a couple of synths. We've got one that's just going wah, 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 setting that pulse that we had from the bass drum earlier. We've got another one that's playing some really nice tinkly stuff in the background. And then we've got a bit of piano. So obviously, John Sinclair is pretty busy right now. And that's probably good for him. He's really good at layering in the studio and multitasking. I don't think I've ever heard the band with him live, so I'm not sure how a lot of that stuff is compensated for. But, there's so many ways of doing that, especially even in the early 80s. But it's got a really good sound to it. It's just got this nice pulse, a nice tone. Don't really know where it's leading, but the strong vocal is definitely keeping the focus at this point, while the rest of the, the keyboard and piano is just backing it up really nicely. Well, this sounds fantastic. I mean, the mix is amazing. You can really feel that kick drum. You can feel the snare and hear it very clearly. The bass is coming through really nicely. Nothing's intruding on the vocals. You got piano is really buried in the background, but I kind of like that for this. I don't think it really needs to be up front cutting through. I think you just need to hear more the inflection of the piano than it really being in your face. And I love that sound Mick is getting as he's, I don't know what that would be, because it's not really muted, but it's just got this real crispness that comes through. And I really love the sound of it. I think it's fantastic. It's really nice rhythm there too. But yeah, everything right now that I'm hearing just sounds fantastic. This has got such a great, powerful sound to it. And, I talk about this on some of the other songs too, but I love these fill-ins that Mick is doing. There's, especially on this one, it's so patient and just fits really well. It's just a little bit in the left ear. It doesn't draw focus from anything going on, but you feel it and you hear it happening. And it's a really nice enhancer. It's like having, you got your ice cream cone, you got your sprinkles, but now we're going to put a little bit of butterscotch or chocolate sauce on it or whatever you like. And it's just that extra added flavor that makes that cone even more special than it already is. Love that kind of stuff. And Mick is so good at it on this album and going forward. There's so much that I've heard, doing some of the later episodes already. So much of this happens, and it really just works for me so well. That's a really nice synth, and it's just at the perfect volume for me. Any louder would be obtrusive, any lower, and I would be searching to hear it and maybe missing out on some of the vocals or some of the other things going on. But I like that when, we've hit this verse, now it sounds different than the last verse. We're not just repeating what we did before with different lyrics. We're actually changing the layers of it, and that makes it more interesting to me. Bass and drums are solid. The bass sounds so good on this song too. It's got a lot of bottom end to it, but it also has a lot of clarity to it, which is really good. It works perfectly in sync with the drums that Lee is playing. Just fantastic. What we're hearing is not difficult. It's really not. It's very simplistic, but sometimes there is beauty in simplicity. Sometimes trying to overcrowd things can make it difficult, as we've heard and we'll hear again down the line. But what I really love is that they're playing just these little parts, like the way the synth changes at the end of the verse there. You're hearing it a little more rhythmically as well as melodically. Then Mick comes in with the guitars. It just blends so nicely. And I have to say, this is such a great mix on the song. Probably the best mix I've heard on this album so far. I remember I was really into Three Dog Night pretty big time when I first heard this. And I remember thinking, wow, these guys have that same kind of vocal harmony, although it's completely different. But at that age, it was an impressive vocal harmony for me to hear in a band. It was very different from other bands that I had heard. And it really kind of took me back to Three Dog Night. I had the 8-track. Listen to me. I had the 8-track. of Golden Biscuits. And that had some great songs on it, a lot of really good harmonies on there. And so I had that connection between the two bands. Of course, I had no idea the real depth of what they would do or had done already with the harmonies. Just absolutely stunning. As I went back and realized that connection some years later, I was like, wow, that kind of blew away what I was thinking. Very, very good stuff. Very talented bands. Every incarnation of them has pulled off some really amazing version of the harmonies that just sounds fantastic, I have to say. I'm just going to interrupt here because there's a lot going on and stuff you guys might want to try paying attention to in the next section, or maybe go back and listen. But we've got a couple different things. We've got something that sounds either like the highest keys on the piano, very muted, or a harp perhaps, or a harp sound perhaps, very much in the background. We've got these wonderful synths that are just coming in, doing these little sweeps. Sounds really good. And I forgot to mention too, at the beginning of the song, I heard a little bit of percussion. It sounded like a wood block before the vocals started. And then once the vocals started, it sounded like another percussive instrument that I couldn't quite place, but definitely interesting to throw those in there. Just one hit here and there, very spread out, but really interesting to do that. With this, they're able to throw in all these little tones, just little bits and pieces that really fill up the space. And it just sounds good. I love this part. That was a really fun and interesting way to transition from that part back into the chorus. Really love that. I love especially that last hanging note of Mick's that sounds multi-tracked. Just the way that blended right back into the chorus, the little intense lead up to it. Just a great build through that part. It really took you down into kind of this open space and then starts filling everything in. It just kind of grabs you and pulls you out of it right to be ready for the last chorus. Really cool part. I've always loved that. Yeah, definitely a good ending, something really powerful, something that you could definitely do in concert very easily. But there's something interesting that happened before that, and I'm really kind of torn on exactly what it is. I've talked about Peter Goalby's range and how I don't really know what his full range is. We've heard him sing pretty straightforward up to this point. And so I'm kind of bent on whether this is actually him or whether this is a guitar note that just perfectly follows where you would expect his voice to go and kind of fills in that gap for you. Check it out and see what you think and let me know. I don't know. I'm torn. I can't call it one way or the other. I think it could go either way. I think that could have been a very brilliantly placed guitar or synth note. But it also could have been Peter Goalby. So either way, there's a bit of a mystery afoot, unless someone knows. So yeah, it's such a great song, though. I love it. I love it from the beginning down to the end. Very powerful. It's not relentless in the way of like a pounding, driving beat or anything like that. It's just relentless in the fact that it doesn't stop. It even when it slows down, it keeps going. And I love that kind of writing. Love the performance. Again, I don't know as far as the writing goes what I can, give praise to Uriah Heep for doing, because I don't know what the original was and what they did with it. But what I will say is that as I listened to their version of this song, I think they did a great job. I think they put out something really special. I totally get why it was released as a single and why it was put on MTV. It's just a great song that has merit. So, yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. And, you know, it's kind of bringing back all those memories of being in the living room with the big console television set that's set on the floor with the rabbit ears and the aluminum foil and all that good stuff. Man, it was a different time. The Atari was floating around somewhere, you know, waiting for me to play Maze Craze or Pitfall or something. And, but we spent a lot of time, especially those first couple of years that MTV came out, just discovering all new bands that we had never heard before. You know, Split Ends, Crowded House, you know, all these bands that we just didn't have any exposure to because they weren't played on our local radio stations, or at least not the ones that we listened to. So MTV was a big deal for discovering music that we hadn't been exposed to before. And Uriah Heep was one of those bands. And look where it led me now, all because I really liked this song. And I had the words wrong. I'm going to laugh at that forever. Anyway, you guys have a great rest of your Monday. Thanks for joining me for this very special show. It's very special to me just because of the meaning of the song and how it has impacted my life, and just the fact that I enjoy the song anyway, even just on its own without all the nostalgia and connection attached to it. And I hope that you guys have a great rest of your day. We'll be back tomorrow with, guess what? Another episode. See you then. Cheers. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Uriah Heep, the Magicians Podcast. If you have enjoyed this show, please consider going over to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast outlet, leaving a rating or a review. Be sure to subscribe to make sure that you are notified when new episodes are available. Please be sure to share this podcast with your fellow Uriah Heep enthusiasts and anyone who you think would like Uriah Heep, which should be everyone. And if you are so inclined, please feel free to contribute to the Patreon account. And if you are not a Patreon subscriber, you can also pay through the PayPal link on the website listed in the show links below. I would also like to thank Uriah Heep for their very generous support of the show. And thank you guys for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Happy days!